Ask the Expert, brought to you by Auger Hollingsworth.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time to Ask the Expert with Brenda Hollingsworth from Auger Hollingsworth, and she is here today to answer questions about pedestrian safety, something we're really going to be seeing a lot of over the next months ahead as the weather starts to get nicer and nicer. If you have a question for Brenda, she's going to answer it today. You can call us live, 613-789-6559, extension 2803, or you can email in your questions at yourmorningottawa@ctv.ca. Brenda, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You know, over the years, I'm sure that this question, the answer to this question has probably changed, but over the last little while, what are you seeing with pedestrian safety when it comes to cases?
Well, the biggest thing, the most serious cases are happening at night in the rain. Like, those are the situations where we're going to see serious collisions with pedestrians hit at high speed because the driver wasn't expecting them, and the consequences are really serious. So if I was going to say what are the worst pedestrian accidents we see, it's those ones. But there's lots of others. Turning right through a crosswalk, maybe you're looking at a car doing something else and you miss that pedestrians have entered the crosswalk. That happens all the time. People running to catch the bus, that happens a lot. Or even walking to cross the bus, but maybe not at an intersection, happens a lot. So there's patterns, but there are a lot of patterns.
So I want to ask you, because, you know, we think probably rightfully so, right away we go, okay, pedestrians first, right away.
Yeah.
But in certain cases, it is not always the driver's fault. Is that what you're seeing? Or is it the driver's fault most of the time?
So if you hit a pedestrian, you are probably going to be at least partly at fault. The Highway Traffic Act creates a reverse onus. It's one of the only times there's a reverse onus. And what that means is that if you hit a pedestrian, you have to prove you weren't negligent. Normally, the person who's injured has to prove that the other person was negligent, but in a driver versus pedestrian, the driver has to prove that they were not negligent. So they'd have to prove that they weren't speeding, that there was no way they could have seen the pedestrian, there's no way they could have either braked or diverted. So it does create a heavy burden on motorists to be careful.
In those situations too, like you see, right? So you basically have to prove undoubtedly that you weren't at fault, which can be difficult at times. In that situation, let's talk about it from the perspective of the pedestrian.
Yeah.
Regardless of in the situation, it's my fault or not, something does happen, you get hit. What is the first thing that I should do? Yeah,
so obviously we always say look after your body first, right? Medical first. But anything you can do at the moment to protect the evidence of what happened is really going to help. So if it's very hard to take a picture of yourself when you're on the ground. Some people do it and it does really help. If you can't take a picture, just notice where you landed on the road so that later you can tell someone, this is where I was hit and this is how far I was moved and this is where I landed. Because we get reconstructionists, engineers to look at these accidents, and the better the information we can give them about where the hit happened and where you ended up on the ground, the stronger the evidence. So really nailing where it happened is going to be very helpful.
Ask the Expert, brought to you by Auger Hollingsworth.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We got Brenda Hollingsworth here from Auger Hollingsworth, and we're talking about pedestrian safety today. And we were talking about a very interesting circumstance that you actually do see quite often. Let's say a pedestrian was having some drinks at a bar or a restaurant and then gets hit by a car. We've been talking about pedestrians as well as the driver of the car at fault, but there could be 3 people involved in that.
Yeah, so if you are a bar or restaurant owner and you overserve someone to the point where they leave on foot but intoxicated and then they're hit by a car, you could actually also share in the responsibility. We see, it's called tavern liability. We see taverns often sharing 30 to 35% of responsibility in these kinds of cases. So it's not enough just to take someone's keys. You gotta make sure that they have a way to get home safely. And if they're really intoxicated, sending them out on foot, you might be protecting other people, but you're not protecting your own client who is intoxicated because you served them. So you have to be really, really careful there. So in that situation, you would probably see liability or responsibility split between the tavern, between the driver, and probably also the injured person who, drank themselves into a position where they couldn't be safe.
Right, and we talk about specific locations too, because that could come into play somewhere here, like the Byward Market is a known pedestrian walking area, especially in the nightlife. How would something like that, the location, play into a case like this?
Yeah, so as a driver, you're going to be likely held more responsible in an area where you should be expecting pedestrians and possibly even intoxicated pedestrians. Byward Market, Lansdowne, these kinds of places, even Elgin Street, where we are expecting to see people out at night, you've got to drive in a way that recognizes that there could be pedestrians anywhere. Different, for example, if somebody ended up stumbling along the side of the Queensway and you weren't expecting a pedestrian there, you'd probably have a better argument as a driver than you would if you hit someone in a place that is like an entertainment district or a school district for children, residential district where there's a park nearby. The environment makes a difference.
And I want to ask you too, we talked about bars and restaurants potentially being held liable. What about if I were to have a barbecue and I had 20 friends over, I was serving them some drinks, some had a few too many, and then something happened on their way home? Can that happen?
So far in Canada, there hasn't been what we call a social host responsibility pinned on a private citizen in their private home. But the door is not closed on that. The case that went up to the Supreme Court of Canada, it was probably 20 years ago now, it wasn't the right set of facts. So the court said, not in this case, but maybe in other cases. So if you are a host in your home, take the same responsibility as a bar or a restaurant. Make sure your guests have a safe ride home or provide them with a couch.
You said the word perfectly to wrap up this. Responsibility.
Responsibility, it's what it's about.
Pedestrian, bar, restaurant owner, or driver, just being as responsible as possible.
Exactly, and be safe.
Appreciate your time, especially as more
pleasure.
people go out on the roads. Brenda, this is such an important conversation to have. And again, if you want to get in touch with Brenda or the entire OJ Hollingsworth team, all their information is up there. You can call them at 613-233-4529. Their website is there, ahinjurylaw.injurylaw.com for any more information, and they do free consultations as well if you just have questions about today's segment or potentially in the future.